Hello, we're going to go over Project 4, Step 2, and we're going to go over the readings, the use of 2 additional sources within your literature review, the color coding of the literature review, and the revision of the literature review. Right, so the first area that we're going to cover are the readings, and we're going to cover the qualitative research methods that you were asked to read if you are in more of the humanities or the arts. This field is highly driven by theory, so theoretical considerations, theories of certain types of ideas or approaches or behaviors or these kinds of things will be typically at the forefront for qualitative methods and research. In qualitative research, it is very site-specific. This means that often in qualitative research, you will go to the place in which the occurrence is happening, and you will observe the occurrence, you will record the occurrence, you'll take field notes, you may take interviews, or you might collect documentation or artifacts that are from that site for further analysis. This means that this is highly researcher-driven because the primary role of research is by the actual research of him or herself, meaning that they go into the site of inquiry and they themselves are the ones that collect all the information as well as are the ones that interpret and apply that research to their own writing. Qualitative research is also data-driven. It's not the type of data that you would expect, say, from quantitative research, where it's highly statistical and very numbers-driven, but instead this data tends to be artifacts, interviews, objects, observations, recordings, and therefore this data is seen by many other discourse communities as being a bit too subjective and not as rigorous in its collection of data because it can be interpreted in multiple different ways. However, qualitative researchers attempt to collect this type of data so that they can uncover some of the hidden assumptions or subjective information or real-world views or applications of ideas or theories in the site that they're researching. It is inductive to deductive, meaning that research is conducted originally as objectively as possible, meaning you do not go into your research site believing that you will find a certain outcome. The attempt is to go in and to observe everything you can observe, gather whatever information you can gather, and use that information to provide you with the outcome, with the theory, or with the ideas that you will then further analyze. So it is meant to be a very holistic and open research method. As I said, it's very highly participant-driven, and so lots of times there will be case studies, interviews, observations, these kinds of things. And the methods for analyzing research is typically a coding of some sort, which means that if you are looking at documents, you might, after reading and rereading and considering the purpose of those documents, come up with some kinds of categories for interpretation that you then use to code. Or you might code the occurrence in which a patient states pain relief or fear, that's connected to your research in pain management and their patient's response to that, or whatever it may be. In quantitative research methods, there's a few different types of designs that are used, and quantitative is extremely data-driven as well, but this type of data, again, is different from qualitative in that it is very numeral. It is very objective, or considered to be very objective in nature. There's some who would say that objectivity is kind of a false notion. And it's highly predicated on the use of statistical analysis for findings. So one type of method is a survey design, and you can see this often in the business field, marketing, where individuals, or even in politics, where individuals are surveyed and asked to answer certain questions regarding certain topics or ideas. And these surveys are very often close-ended questions, meaning that you're only provided with a certain number of responses that you can provide, and it's not narrative-based. So, for instance, one example of a survey-based design would be when you fill out, the employment form, and they ask you your ethnicity. And often individuals complain because they don't find a box that they can check for their ethnicity, or that the ethnicity is incorrectly stated on the form, but there's nothing they can do but either not mark or mark a certain box. So with these design, population is in mind, so often we're looking at a very particular population to find very particular answers to very particular questions. We want to gain a sampling as large of a population that we can from the demographics that we've decided. So if it be women between the ages of 40 and 60, we want as large of a number as we can. That validates our research much more. We want to make sure that we figure out what the instrument of the survey is going to be, whether it's going to be electronic, whether it's going to be phone-based, whether it's going to be face-to-face, and what kind of questions and how long those questions. Often a field testing of that survey is conducted to find out, the kind of glitches in that survey or questions that participants might not understand or necessarily wish to respond to. Then a pilot of that study is conducted with a smaller sampling size of the population that's been determined for this design. Timeline of that survey is very important. How long is the survey going to circulate? How much time are you going to spend in collecting data? You also have to be sure that you pay attention to the variables in this survey. This means things that might occur that might not occur in other settings or with other participants. And the methods for analysis is very statistical in nature, percentage-based, using things like ANOVA, chi-squared, these kinds of things. And then quantitative research that we're probably most familiar with would be experimental designs. You'll see a lot of these in the medical field, in which, you'll look at a particular group of participants and have a particular size, African American women between the ages of 40 and 60 with heart disease, for instance. The selection of participants is very important in that you have as wide open as a selection process and opportunity for participants to be included. Problems with the use of live participants is, as it was mentioned in the chapter, would be morbidity, dropping out, variations to the responses, etc. In this type of design, you need to have a dependent and independent variable. So the independent variable is the one that does not change. This would be the variable in which, for instance, one would receive a placebo for a type of medicine, whereas the dependent would be the one that would be looked at when the results are provided to see what change has occurred. It's often connected to treatment-based administration. Something is being treated, or something is being assessed, or something is being observed in some manner that has to do with some type of illness. It also looks at the measurement of the study and the reliability of that study. So many times if you're in, a field in which you are asked to do quantitative research, you'll be asked to look at the methods that's been conducted and the results from that methods to see whether or not they are reliable. Are they using the proper amount of participants? Are they using a large enough sample size? The demographics, whether they be appropriate or not. What kind of procedures are they doing? What kind of data are they collecting? How are they analyzing it? And then the steps of the procedure has to be very clearly laid out. You'll see this in the methods section where it's almost like a recipe, where step by step every single thing that is done is mentioned and must be mentioned, because this type of research, an experimental research design, is primarily replicated in order to continue that research and to expand it. The validity of the research is always going to be questioned, and you'll find in these types of research-based designs that, in the discussion section, they will talk about the limitations to the study and how it is that they validated their findings. And then it's typically statistical analysis and then interpretation of that analysis. Alright, so now that we've covered the primary readings, I want to talk about the 2 additional sources and the color coding of the literature review. So you will need to find 2 additional sources that you will use to place into your literature review. I highly suggest that you decide on finding the 2 sources either based on my feedback, in which I said you do not have enough sources in this particular area of your literature review, or where I said you need more sources to validate these claims, and also by looking at the color coding of your literature review. So what you might start out with is color coding your literature review. Each source related to a particular idea or topic or question will be coded in a different color, and you might then find that as you look over your literature review, you have a large amount of sources for, say, the history of your topic and the methods used for application of that type of topic that you're looking at, but not enough when it comes to the pros and cons, right? And you should also go in and look at the color coding of your annotations to see also, you know, where is there information that's missing, because it may not even be that you are necessarily needing a source just for one particular idea or one particular topic, but instead that you have certain ideas or themes or topics or concepts or questions that don't have enough sources to validate what you're stating. So you're going to want to make sure you look at both. And based on the findings from those color coding procedures through your literature review and the annotations, which you should have already done, you should then decide on which 2 additional sources that you should go and find for insertion into your literature review from Project 3. And then for the revision of your literature review, use the color coding of sources and the color coding of the literature review in order to go in and decide where it is that you should do revisions, where you should add sources, where you might need to expand ideas. Also, of course, use my feedback. I provided extensive feedback on everybody's literature review, and you will want to go in, read my comments, make the appropriate revisions, contact me if you need any clarifications. And this revision includes the revision to your introduction and to your literature review. This means that I should see, with your final revision of the literature review, the revised introduction and literature review combined together. That means it should flow from introduction and then to literature review all in one document. Please, please do that for me. I need to see how those 2 pieces are working together, as do you as a writer. Any questions or concerns, as always, please email me and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.